the big thing is we want to make sure that first off, we're executing the right haircut. That's the biggest thing, but we need to understand what the shape of the haircut is going to look like in the end. And in order to visualize the haircut or to perform a good haircut, you have to first visualize the end result, right? Like when you want to take a selfie, you kind of have in your mind how you want to look. You're like, okay, that's my view. Boom, you take the picture and then you look at it like, no, that ain't it. Then you make an adjustment, right? You want to visualize the look. Now this haircut in particular that we're going to be focusing on, it has a unique shape to it. It comes from the nape, this area, and then off of the occipital bone, and you should have some space here. The other thing that it has is this shape. So you're looking at this hair being approximately this long because it should go down to about the nose. Do you see that? Right? The other thing is you want to transition into the crown, but you don't want the crown to be too short because then you cut off the crown. And you need to have some weight back here in the occipital bone, from the crown to the occipital, that tapers into the nape or into the neck. So if you don't understand that part, let me know right now. We good? So there are reference points of the head. And all of these reference points are important because it's going to give us direction for what we're going to do in the haircut. You guys are sectioning mannequins. I know you're working on perm rods. You're doing 9 blocks. And the purpose of where you're blocking the hair is based off of the transitions that take place in the head, or on the head rather. So some of the transitions that take place are in the front. Your forehead is not square, it's rounded. In the temporal area, it's kind of a little flat and a little concave. The flattest part of your head is generally on the sides, right? The sides are called the parietals. But from the apex, or the highest point of the head, into the crown, all of your head begins to round out, almost like an umbrella. So if you were to take the umbrella from the top, you would piece it out, and this is what your umbrella would look like. Do you all visualize that umbrella on the top of the head? That's because from this point, the head is rounding off. So I'm using the umbrella as a visual of all those little pieces so you can see where there are going to be many sections of the head that we're focused on. Those many sections are showing us where the hair is transitioning. From here to here, it's flat. From here to here, it begins to round to the back. From here to here, it's just the back. Do you see that? Do you guys all visualize what I'm saying? When I go over here, from here to here, it's rounding off to this parietal. From here to here, it's flat. So you want to visualize the umbrella. This apex is important because it shows us where the hair begins to transition, either forward, flat, front, or back. Okay? So all those sections you do, they're important for a reason. But while you're cutting hair, you begin to visualize the shape and the movements of the head. So first thing, let me get this 1450 mannequin that we have here.
Which one you want?
It doesn't matter. So what I was discussing a little bit earlier, we'll grab this guy, we'll move him for a second, and we'll come back to him. What you see here is what I mentioned earlier. You have this shape, right? Let me go back to my other camera. So you have this shape taking place. Do y'all see that? Because as I go here, there is an area where these connect. Do you see that? Now this isn't even combed, right? But that's the shape of this. If I grab this, it should fall somewhere between the nose and the lips. Is that happening? Okay, that's what we want for your 450. If it's shorter than this, problem. If it's longer than this, not a problem. It's going to be harder for you to blend it in. Okay? The other thing that we're looking at is from the nape. Remember the shape that I was mentioning earlier? You want to be able to have some weight in the occipital bone so it can transition into, look at how all this hair is coming into my comb. Do you see that shape? So this is the shape of the haircut. What does it say on the back? 450. Let me get that other one. Let's first start with the back. Is there something missing here? There's too much weight. First off, that's too long. and there's not enough hair in here. It doesn't travel to the comb. So that's problem number one. Could this work? Sure, but it's too close. This is more like your 1200 haircut, 1250. If I check the front, it's still too long, which means I'm gonna have a tough time trying to blend this in no matter where it is. But it does have something like that angled shape that I was looking at. So the two shapes that we're looking at primarily is this one and this one. These are the two shapes that we're focused on, transitioning from the nape to the crown, and then from the front to the crown when it's elevated. Okay? If you can master these two, the rest of the haircut falls in place. So if this person came in, you'd be like, oh, I could fix this. This is an easy fix. I can blend this in. I can trim some of this. This would probably be an easy haircut. There's a guy who's grown his hair out 2 months and you want to trim this up. You could probably fix this to make it look like your 450. However, it's just a little bit too close, right? You all agree? All right, cool. This is the shape that we're actually looking for. This is the shape. See how much hair is back here? We still want this much hair. And when you're looking at it, that comb is connected from the nape to the top. It doesn't go away from it. This is how you check your own haircut. If your comb starts to flatten out, you're cutting too much off. Does this make sense? Brock's like, man, I wish I'd have heard that earlier. All right, so now you have this guy. You got this guy who comes in with all of this hair and you're like, where do I begin? So let's go around the room. Anyone, by a show of hands, how would you start to execute that haircut with the person coming in looking like this? Anybody? It doesn't matter. Tell me what you do. Okay, so you want to do a horseshoe. You're saying section the hair off, right? Let's do a horseshoe, right? Now that I got my horseshoe shape, I'm going to do what? Clip this and get this out the way? Yeah. Okay. I'm okay with that. Now, this is an advantage for sure, but it's also a disadvantage. Can anyone tell me why this could be a disadvantage if we do this?
You can't see where the ends are going to touch.
Say that again?
You can't see where the ends are going to touch.
When you say the ends, what do you mean?
From the top.
You won't be able to see the connect. Correct. Now, a skilled barber that has been doing it for a while can kind of visualize how much they want to cut. Because I'm only focused on two parts. What two parts am I focusing on the most?
The angle of the touch.
This shape and this shape. So I'll focus on this last. As long as I get this, I can tie this to that. Okay? So yes, you're right. If you're a novice barber and you're not familiarized with the shape of the cut, I just shared it with you. This is what I'm focused on. If I can get this down, all I got to do is tie this into this, and we know that this length is going to be here. Those are the only things I got to focus on. Okay? So you're right. If you don't know what you're doing, you could run into some difficulty and get confused, and then you're like, oh my God, I messed this haircut up. And yes, you'll have a disconnect, and then you're trying to figure it out. So we're going to do this method. I do like this. I like the fact that we can go right in and cut this, but this person hasn't been cut. What's another thing that we can do? Section it how? Well, we already got one section on the top. Anybody? I'm cool with sectioning, but I just want to know what you mean. What was the visual that I gave you earlier? Umbrella. So if we was to visualize an umbrella, I could section this off as one quadrant. I can section this off as another quadrant, another quadrant, another quadrant. Right? I could do that. That's one way. And I do like that method. Maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. Let's go around the room. What else would you do? For the new guys, I get it. This is all completely brand new to you. You've been here a week, right? So I'm not expecting you to have all the answers, but I definitely want to get you guys to open up. Sorry?
Cut down the bulk.
So I can cut down the bulk. How would you cut down the bulk? Without cutting into your shape, because that's where most people make a mistake. They go in, and what is the common theme that you see people do? Well, if you're allowed to use guards, what do people normally do? They put that 4 on there, and they go the whole ways up. And the problem is, you took off way too much weight for the haircut. The haircut should always transition at the parietal ridge to the occipital. So if you're not familiar with what the parietal ridge is, you would place your comb under somebody's ear and you would place it up against their head. And right where the head is transitioning away from the comb is the parietal ridge for this individual. Each one of your parietal ridges are completely in a different spot. They're not all the same. The occipital bone is the bone at the base of the skull. That's also going to give you a transition. That is the transition for this haircut. But we know we need to keep a little bit of weight because we're transitioning the top into the bottom and the focus is going to be the blend. But this is the shape. Okay? So sectioning would be one thing. Removing the bulk is another one. How would you remove the bulk? We're not going to put a 4 on and take this off because we're not allowed to use guards for our evaluation. So you would do clipper over comb?
I wouldn't use clipper over comb. I would use shears.
You would use shears?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me give you a quick cheat sheet. I like it. Shears, what else? You use it, what do you mean the comb? Comb can't cut the hair.
I was like using it to measure it.
Okay, so what do you mean?
Like sticking it straight out and kind of measuring it out.
Measuring out this way? Oh, to get an idea how long I want this to be? Not a bad idea. You have a visual. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So if I know that this is the shape I want, I know I want to come out to here. You could go in and grab this hair out and put a little bit of weight and cut it right off. That would be a good way, but you want to make sure that you're cutting enough off. Here's another secret. All this hair is coming off. I know that this is going to be short, so I can go right in like this and just cut this right off. All I'm doing is removing a little bit of weight. That's it. Now, you're not as intimidated with the look of this cut, are you? When this guy comes in, oh, I can work with that. That's not that long. So don't let the long hair scare you. Does that look a little bit more easier to cut than this side? You're not as intimidated with this, are you? But you know that this bottom piece got to be a little bit closer. So did I cut too much off or did I cut not enough off? I didn't cut enough off, but I gave myself a better framework to work with. Do you think that your instructor sees you doing that, they're going to be like, what are you doing?
See, I did that and it kind of went too short.
How'd you know how much to cut? Like,
So I pulled the hair out at a 90, and all I did was maintain the shape that I was cutting.
I said shears. I didn't do shears.
So to answer your question, let's get this in the camera so everyone can see exactly what I did. I pulled the hair out at a 90, right, from here. And then I maintained the shape. But that's a lot longer than I actually needed. I actually needed here. That's still a lot longer. It gave me a little bit of room. And I was showing you that so you're not intimidated by this. This can be scary, like where do I start? Let's get the intimidation factor out the way, right? So I'll do that again on this side. I'll do the same exact thing. This is what I would do real quick. Somebody comes in, like especially here at the school, and I'm just trying to show something quick. All I want to do is get this out the way because this doesn't look as scary now, right? So now that I know that, and I know that the shape of my cut that I want comes from here and comes out to here, I now have a pretty decent guideline of where I want to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the sides first. Let's turn him. Get him here. And y'all can all see what's happening? All right, cool. So how many of you go like this, grab the hair and try to do this? Here's what, here. I want you to pay attention to what's happening underneath when I do that. I go like this and I grab the hair. See all those tangles? No, what you want to do is you want to slide the comb in because you're creating a section, and then you want to lift the hair up. Now look at my guide. So I'm going to slide in at the parietal ridge. I'm going to go right underneath. I'm going to lift this hair out to the length that I actually need it. Let's do it from the side. I'm going to slide in, right, at the parietal ridge. I'm going to lift this hair up, and I'm going to leave a little bit longer than I actually need it, just in case. And I'm going to cut straight across.
So you're going to start at the top rather than the bottom?
I'm always working from the top to the bottom, because what are we blending? We're blending into the top of the look. Generally, I would cut the top first, but you're doing a 450. That's more skilled and advanced. You want to be cutting from the top down. I'm going to show you why. So now that I just did that, I did one cut, right? I'm gonna go back to the parietal ridge. That's my reference point. I'm gonna lift this hair out, and when I bring this out, what I'm looking for is any long hairs that stick out. There's a few right there. Cut them right off.
So you're not tilting the
Does that look hard? I'll show you about the tilt in a second. Now, does that look hard? Not at all. So now I'm gonna turn this so that you guys can get a better visual about what I'm about to do. So your question was, did I tilt the comb? For my first initial set, I did not. I went straight up, perpendicular with the ground, completely straight out. So that's a horizontal cut. Horizontal cuts create what? Weight. How do you remove the weight? Vertical cutting. But what I want to do first is I want to transition this down to my sides. Okay? So now that I have my guide at the top, I want to make this guide go the whole ways around. So all I'm doing is another section at the parietal ridge. Notice that my comb is dropping lower. Why is my comb dropping lower? Say that again? Because I'm going from the parietal ridge to the occipital bone. Okay? So I'm going right at the parietal ridge. I'm going to lift this up. There goes my guide. Do you see it disappearing? Let's do it again. Looking at in the monitor. I'm looking for my guide. Do you see it right there?
Yep.
As I go up, it disappears. Here's where my guide is. And then I can remove that hair. And then I'll comb this down. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead right at the occipital bone. Lift this up. There goes my guide. Trim that off. And again, I'm still just going straight up. I'm not tilting the comb at all. I'm going, if this was the head, I'm just bringing it straight out. I'm not tilting it at all. What a lot of people do is they'll go in, they'll tilt, and when they tilt, they cut a pothole because it's shorter under here than it is up here. So you want this to be straight first to create your guide.
So you just guessed that length? Oh, I think I missed
Did I guess the length? Great question. Anybody want to help answer that one? All right, so if you're going to do a skin fade, right, and y'all go in and y'all do this, did you guess where you was going to put that first guide? You didn't? You just knew that was where it was supposed to be. Everybody kind of figures it out. I think this is where I want it to be, and you create your first guideline, then you create your second guideline, and then you start blending the hair in. Whether it's a temp fade or whatever, you put the line where you think it's supposed to be. So you're guessing based on what? Say that again? You say shape of the head is one, but based on what? Style of the cut. What else? Not the height. Okay, so you're using reference points, low bald, high, mid. No, I'm basing this guideline off of what the end result is going to be. I'm always focused on the end result. I need this extra weight. If I cut it too short, it's not going to match my end result. So you have to guess. You got, just like when you do a skin fade and it's, damn, that was too high or it's too low. It's the same thing. Every haircut, no matter which haircut you're doing, you're making better guesses the better you get. Okay? And the better you get, the easier it is to fix. So let's say you did a low fade, right? Or you was too afraid to take the fade higher, but they went higher and you did like a medium fade. You're blending it, the haircut looks good, and then they look in the mirror and they go, can you take that a little bit higher? Do you reset or do you just blend it out into the top? You just blend it out. Why would you reset and start the haircut all over? Because you got better. But once you know your guess and you know your client, you know the end result and the overall look, you make better guesses. Okay? You just make better guesses. So now that we have this in place and I have my guideline, let's take a look. If I'm coming, I want to make sure y'all can see it. If I am pulling the hair, if I'm looking at the nape, here's the nape, and this is the shape that I want to go with. Let's turn them a little bit more. This hair, is it about where I need it to be? Okay, it might not be perfect, right? But it's about where I need it to be. I can work with that. If it was here, it's too short. So I left it a little bit longer. My guess was all right. It was all right guess. You don't have to overthink it. Guess what? I'm not even going to use this guideline for this side. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to guess again. Now with experience, you get better with your guesses.
So what if we don't do it like that? Is there another way to do it?
To do what? If I don't do what?
Cut it by doing it with that cone?
You're talking about going in like this and doing this. Is there another way to do it? There's plenty of ways to skin a cat. Right? GPS, when you put the location you're trying to go to in your car, it's going to give you what? Three different routes to get there. You're going to get a fast route, you're going to get the scenic route, you're going to get the toll road. You make a decision which way you want to go. So the question was, I would like to see how to execute a 450 haircut. So I'm going to use the direction that I would go. There's plenty of ways. If you want me to do it a different way on this side, I can. And I do it this way, but I don't want to confuse anybody. If I stick to one system, it makes it easier to follow.
Just the easier way.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
This is a much easier way. Okay? I kept it, and the reason why it's easier, because I kept it really simple. The things that we're focused on is this and this. The length of this and how short we're going to be in the back. If we focus on that, the rest falls into place. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to reiterate for the newer students that you cannot use your guards for this process, for this particular, we're not talking about clinic 4, but for this particular 450, you can use your clippers and your shear.
Right. For the 450 evaluation, no guards at all. We allow you to use guards on the floor, right? But when you go to boards, it is a clipper and over comb process, and it may not even be this detailed, right? But you want to go to the boards, and if they say you can use guards, fantastic, I'll use my guards. If they say no guards, well, okay, no problem. I've been doing that for a while. Okay? So we're going to guess again. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go in right where? At the parietal ridge. I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to guess. Based on what, though? Based on the end result, but my professional experience. I've been cutting for a while. Right? Would you? All right. But you'll make better guesses the better you get. So I'm going where again? Parietal ridge, and I'm doing what with the comb? To the occipital bone. I'm lifting this up. I'm looking for my what? Where's my guide? Let me turn this. Y'all make sure y'all can see. Parietal ridge, down towards the occipital bone. Lift this up. Am I angling my comb? I am not. But do you see my guide on the end there? Then I'm going to go to my occipital bone. Lift this up. My guide is over here. Let me do this quick so you can see this. So let's take a look at this, because I want you to see how this looks. If you're looking from back there, the haircut drops and it's longer in the middle. Y'all see? I mean, off to the side right here. You see that? I'm going to marry these two together. So what I'm doing is I want you to look just from the top view so you can visualize it. The comb's can't see it because it's dark, but once I put the comb, you'll be able to see it. Once I lift this up, do you see where it's short here and it's long here? Okay. When I go over here, do you see where it's short here, but it's long here? What I'm looking for is that these two areas, what's this part again? Visualizing. An umbrella. This is a quadrant. Remember, this is a quadrant in the back. This is a quadrant where the head begins to round. I'm looking at where this area is rounding and this area is rounding, and I want them to be about the same length. Now, if I wanted to be anal, and I'll just do this for just some shaving cream and giggles, right? I'll go to this quadrant, and let's measure this real quick. This is 3 inches. Let's go to this area, and I'm going to look at it. Boy, that boy is special. That's 3 inches. And these were guesses. It's not perfect. Okay? So you don't have to worry about it being perfect, but at the end result, you want to give an overall good-looking haircut. So if I go across the occipital bone and I lift this up, do you see where my peak is? It's short, short peak. I'm just going to cut that little peak off. Go here, because right there is a little bit longer. There's a peak. Well, I want y'all to see it. So here's what I want you to see. When I go under here, parietal ridge down to the occipital bone. I lift this up. Short, short. Do you see that tiny little peak? Okay? That's what I'm cutting off. Now, when you look at it, does that look about right? Right? We're just talking about the weight up here. We ain't looking at none of this. We're just talking about the weight we got up top. It's about right. Is it perfect? No, but it looks pretty darn good. Now that I have the shape, because look what happens when I put this at the nape and I lift this out, did we get the shape I was looking for? Okay? So now that I have that shape, I can begin to transition from the top to the bottom. How many cuts did we do up top? Right here. 1. I mean, I got this little extra edge off, but literally I went in and I cut 1, then I went over here and I did 1. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I might have did it like a couple little touches, but I really did 5 cuts to clean that up. Was that a lot? Not at all. So now what I'm doing is, if this is the end shape of the cut, my guide will be at the top and will also be at the bottom. Okay? Because the bottom is where the haircut ends or finish or starts, wherever if you start from the bottom, work your way up. In this case, I recommend working from the top and work your way down. I'm going to show you how. Here's where you begin to tilt. I'm going to go at the parietal ridge. I'm going to lift this hair up. And as I'm lifting this hair up, I'm looking for my guide at the top. Once I see my guide at the top, I now want to angle my comb so that it transitions down to the end, or where the taper begins in the temporal area or in the nape. But right now we're working in the temporal area. Do you see that slight angle that I have? The hair fell out because the guide is up top. I want you to pay attention to the hair up top. I'm lifting it up. Do you see where it's at? Once I begin to tilt it, it starts to go away. So I know that I'm not going to cut into that. And I know that this comb is going into the skin. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stand here so you guys can actually see what's happening on the screen. Y'all ready? I'm lifting this up. There's my guide up top. It's beginning to fall. Cut number 2, down at the bottom. I can put this comb all the way at the temporal, and I can lift this completely out until my guide is. Straight at the temporal, pull this completely out. Do y'all see that? And that haircut is blended. How many times did I cut right here? How many? 3 cuts. 1 up top, 1 in the middle, and 1 at the bottom. I'm going to fine tune this. But I got the hard part out the way. Let's proceed.
So could you have done that vertically, or did you?
Could I have done it vertically? Like this, you mean? I could have. The problem is this is a mannequin head. So this hair is going to stick straight out. Does your hair stick completely straight out? His might, but it's short. His definitely doesn't. As soon as I push this comb in there, it's going to lay down. I'll be pushing the hair, and then what am I doing when I'm pushing the hair? What's that called? Over-directing. Very good. So I don't want to over-direct the hair. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm getting the hair to lay down the way that it needs to lay down. So we got our 3 cuts in there, right? We'll come back to clean this up. I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. I'm going where's my next cut going to be? Where's cut number 2 for this quadrant going to be?
Angling the comb towards the occipital.
Okay, and correct.
Well, you're going to go below it.
Right below it. Right below that parietal ridge. So occipital bone, parietal ridge. Here's what I'm looking at. I want to do this so you can see it. This is what I'm looking at right here. When I lift this out, my guide's at the top, my guide's at the bottom. Do you see that? It goes away. Go right in, lift this up. There's my guide. You see that? Once I found my guide, I can cut that off. That is cut number 2. There's a pothole in this haircut. It's right here because this is long or short, and this is long. So if I take this in here and I lift this up, there's going to be a pothole right here because this is too long. Now I got to transition this to that. So this is cut number 3. Tilt this down. Take my comb right below where I was just cutting. I'm lifting this up. There's my guide at the top. How much angle is on that comb? Very little. I'm not doing this. I'm straight out, and as I'm transitioning, I'm slowly creating an angle. Why am I slowly creating an angle? Because the head dips in. It's the shape of the head. That was cut number 3. Let's do cut number 4. Right at the bottom, I'm all the way at the nape. I'm going to lift this out right to my guide. And when I find my guide, that's cut number 4. How we looking? One, two, 3, 4. That's 7 haircuts. I'm not going to follow my guide. I'm going to guess. But I'm guessing off the shape of the head and the end result of the haircut based on my experience. I know that this is the length of the cut, right? You see it. When I go right below the parietal ridge, I'm going to lift this up. There goes my guide at the top. There's my next cut. That's cut number 2. I'm going to go down to cut number 3, right at the temporal area. Let me get this out the way. There's a lot of hair. Go right underneath there. Lift this right out. There goes my guide. Transitioning right into the temporal area. That is cut number 3. Blending from top to bottom. We're now going to go ahead. I'm going to go right here, right below the parietal ridge towards the occipital bone, doing the same thing, creating my section. Lift this out. When I lift this out, I'm looking for my guide. That is cut number 2 in this area. We're going to go a little bit lower than that. Cut number 3, lift this out, trim that off. Cut number 4, right at the nape, lift this out to my guide. Cut number 4. Now there's a long piece here. Again, it's not perfect. I'm not worried about making it perfect. I'm worried about creating the shape. I can fine tune it in a second. Is anyone ever painted a room? You've painted a room. You did painting before? Okay, so you painted? That was like a job, occupation. Okay, so when you have to paint a room, one wall, what do? But tell me what your process would be. You tape it off. What do you mean taping it off?
So you don't mix colors with other colors.
Okay, so like you mean like the wood trim versus the wall. Okay, good. So you put tape. What else would you do? What's that? Prime it? Okay, before you prime it, what else would you do?
I would just get the roller and start by corners.
Okay, so what's that called?
Outlining.
Cutting the room.
Cutting it in.
You're cutting the room. So basically what you would do is you would create a frame from the ceiling to the wall. You would frame around the wall, correct? And each wall would have like a little strip so that way you can separate the ceiling so you don't get paint on the ceiling by accident. You don't get paint on the trim. You don't get paint on the other wall if you're going to make it a different color. That's what I'm doing. I'm creating the look. I'm creating the framework, and then I'll paint the room. And then you go back and then you fine tune it and get the spots that were missed, right? If I was to try and perfect the wall as I'm going along the whole time, would it take me much longer to do? Right? So you want to cut the room, then you want to paint the wall, and then you go back and clean up everything that needs to be cleaned up. That's your wall. If it needs 2 coats, it needs 2 coats. But for the most part, you cut the room, you go ahead and paint the room, and then you go back and then follow up just to clean it up. That's all I'm doing is I'm painting the room. I'm just making the shape. Once I had the shape, I can go back and follow it up. So now, let's go to the back here. So in the back, so I mean, if you look at this, you can see that from this quadrant and this quadrant, it looks pretty even other than that little tail going in the back, right? So now I'm going to focus most of this energy right now in the back. Do you see the shape of the cut though? You see the shape? All we're focused on is the shape. We're not talking about how perfect it is. Did I do any fancy techniques? I kept it real simple. I'm going to follow up with some techniques in a minute. But right now, I just want to focus on the shape of the cut because that's what's important. I'm looking for this and this. I almost got this done. We almost there. So let me get out of the way here. And here's what we're going to focus on. This quadrant. I need to go a little bit over here because I didn't cut this hair. So let me go over here, lift that up. There goes my guide. Trim that off. That's still part of 2. There's my guide. That's part of 3. That's part of 4. Now I can do the center. Right down the middle. Go straight across. I'm looking for my guides on the ends. Do you see where it's starting to separate and go away? Okay. But I want to make sure I go right above the occipital bone, going towards the occipital bone. There's my guide up top. I just got to get this little tiny bit off. Then I'll go right below that, right at the occipital bone. Pull this out. There goes my guide. Trim that little bit off. I'm going to go right below that. Trim that off. And I'm going to go right at the nape. Pull this completely out, finding my guide at the top, and cut that off. Now look at what we got. Let me get that 450 mannequin again, please. The good one, not the bad one. If I was to compare the shapes, do they look similar? There's a lot of hair up top, so don't worry about that. We're talking about this part. Do they look similar? Okay? That's what we're looking for, symmetry. It just has to look similar. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now that we got this out the way, we can begin to transition a lot of this. So there's 2 ways that you go about doing this. I can either do this with my shears, or I can do this with my clippers. I prefer, because you have to show a variety of uses, that you would use your shears. So the first place that I want to do is, let's take a look at our quadrants again. What are we using as quadrants in our mind visually? An umbrella. So we're going to start at the occipital bone. I'm going to bring this down here. Let's get this out the way. So here we go. Here's the apex. The apex. I'm going to get this out the way. And here is my first quadrant for my umbrella. Do you see it? Okay? All I want to do is marry this to this. So the first thing that I'm going to do, y'all can see what I'm doing, I'm going to do a vertical sectioning from there. I'm going to pull this out, and there goes my guide here. Look at how my fingers are going straight up and down. So from the side, my fingers are going straight up and down. Let me turn this so they can see that. Boom. Straight up and down, going into the shape of my cut. Do you see that? Do you see the guide right underneath? See it? Okay. So now, from the top, let's go back to the top. Was this a better view for you guys to see what I'm doing? Not really? Okay, so this one? Okay. So, right there? Okay. So I'll bring this up. I'm cutting straight up. If my fingers are pointing down, my shears are going straight up. I'm grabbing another section, the same section, but just a little bit higher because I'm not cutting past my knuckle. There's that. I'm going to go a little bit lower, making sure that I got every piece that was in there. Bam. I'm going to go to the next section right beside it that is still within my umbrella. Bottom, fingers down, shears up. I'm tying this to my guide in the back. Do you see how I just brought them together? If I keep going, they're still together. Do you see that? Okay. Guess what I just did? I finished pretty much the back of this cut. Let me check it this way. My fingers are going up, then the shears are going down. There is an area that needs to be cut, so let me hit that. Right there. That's the back portion of the cut. Now we're going to focus on this next quadrant. From the umbrella, apex, working it down. This haircut is going which way? Is it styled sideways, frontwards, backwards, down? Down, back? No. No. What do you want me to change? So you want me to stay in here, but then you want me to move?
This light is like projecting right on the screen.
This light? So move your chair. Just move the chair. You're talking about this ring light, right? Yeah, slide on over. You want the better view? So we're focused on the umbrella. So let me give you my other angle real quick. This is the other quadrant of the umbrella. Do you see it? Yes? Okay. So right from the apex straight down, right? That's a section that you have all been doing in class. Right from the apex, I'm going right back here because I already cut all that. This is the section that I'm looking for my umbrella. Do you all see it? So what I'm going to do is it'll be 1, 2, 3 haircuts. So cut number 1. I'm pulling this out. There goes my guide. Fingers down. Shears up. Cut number 2. Fingers down. There's my guide at the bottom. Do you see it? Okay. Fingers down. Shears up. Cut number 3. Looking for the hair. There it is. There's my guide. Fingers down. Shears up. Here's what I do want to show you. If you notice, I'm pulling the hair slightly over directing it so that it falls back a little bit. It's going to be longer in the front. You'll see what I'm saying in a second. I'm not pulling it straight out this way because the style of the haircut. Malik, you with me? Malik, you with me? Okay, so this section right here, the reason why I'm pulling this and over directing this slightly is because this look goes backwards. But I also have length in the front. When you over direct the hair one way, it's longer the other way. Okay? So now, let's go to our other quadrant. We're not going to focus on the front. So from the apex down to the point of recession. The point of recession is right where your hairline is receding. Right. So I'm going from the apex to the point of recession, and that is my other umbrella section. It's a very small section. It's not very long. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to over direct this to my last guide. And the reason I'm over directing this to the last guide is because this style goes backwards. So right here, I'm pulling this hair back, finding my guide. That's pretty much cut already. Right there is some extra hair that needs cut. Let's cut that. Next section, pulling it back, finding my guide. There's my guide. You see the guide underneath? You see it? Okay. And I'm just cutting that, clean that up. The next section, I'm over directing it back to that same area, cutting the hair, going back, same area. I'm just cutting that extra long hair right there, going back, taking all of this to that guide. There's the guide. And I clean that up. What I want you to see is this haircut, as it comes, is going to drop this way. Do you see the hair falling forward? Okay. Do you see the haircut falling forward? Y'all see that? That's what that's all we're looking for. Again, next quadrant. This haircut should take you 10 minutes. It's not going to take you 10 minutes. It's going to take about a half hour to 40 minutes, but that's okay. If I was doing this in the barbershop, this haircut would be done within 8 minutes. It's a really quick haircut. I'm not even if it was that long, it's a really quick haircut. If you know what to look for, this shape, how long am I going to cut that? Bam, bam, bam. I could have said, here's what I could have done. I could have said, this is how long I want this hair. Snip. This is how long I want this hair. Snip. And tied these two together. You said there's another way to do it? That's one. This is the length. I can't go shorter than that. This is the length, can't go shorter than that. And then I bring this to that one, and everything in here is going to be that angle. It's another way. Okay? Just another way to do it. So now that I have that shape of that side done, let's focus on this side. Go back to my comb. Umbrella shape right in this back quadrant. I need to stand over here because my fingers need to go down. Fingers down. See my guide at the bottom? Fingers down, shears up. Next section. Fingers down, shears up. Next section, fingers down. You real stubborn, ain't you? Get up and slide over here. You the one that asked for this. You got everybody up here because you wanted this, but you won't move, to be in the right position. Are you sure? Okay, so now when I stand here, can you see? You sure can.
I'm just get up.
There you go. Good. Now we got action. So, with this side was already good. We cut all this. This is done. Work them all. See, I forgot where I was at, but you see what I did first? I went back and checked it. I was like, oh wait, I already did this. Now I know what I'm doing. Go here. If the chair was spinning, but I'm keeping it like this so you guys can see, I would know where I'm at. And I always stand in one spot. I'm only moving so you guys can see where I'm at. So right here, I'm going to take this umbrella quadrant. There it is. Fingers down, shears up. Notice I'm beginning my over direction because the head is rounding back. From the apex and this quadrant, everything is rounding back this way. So this is kind of getting over directed. I can always go a little bit shorter, but I can't go longer if I cut it off. So now, this section right here, from the apex straight down right behind the ear there, do the same thing. Pull this straight out. There goes my guide at the bottom. Straight out. I'm over directing it slightly to the back. Next one. Well, I don't want to cut that yet. I'm going to take a look at it. Move that out the way. How's that look? We in there, right? Ron, I keep hearing you over here sighing, bro. So now where am I going to go?
Towards the recession?
Correct. From the apex, right towards the recession. I'm getting that out the way. I'm only focused on this tiny little area right here, part of my umbrella. That's what we're using today, the umbrella, right? This guy's sleepy. So now I'm going to take this little section, and what am I doing with this hair? Am I coming out? I'm going to over direct it, and I'm taking it to what? The last guide I just cut. So everything's going to go to that last guide. So my fingers aren't going to move from here. I'm always going to bring everything back to here. Okay? Next section, grab the hair. I'm coming right back to here, same spot. Next section, grab the hair, come back to here, fingers down, shears up. Do you see how I'm bringing everything to the same spot? Right at the point of recession. I double checked it first, bring it back to the same spot. Now, when I comb this back, see that weight? It's probably not cut right, but we'll see. Do you see the hair drop into the front? So let me go ahead and look because I might have been out of position. This probably needs cut a little bit more. So I'll go here, I'll bring this back, and there it is, right there, I see it. One more, bring this back, cut this. Two, much better. Do you see the shape of the head? Okay. The next thing I could do now, Brock, I could easily go like this and cut directly across. Could? You want me to do that? I could. You don't want me to do that? Okay, so what would you like to see me do? All right. So you want to know how I do it? All right. So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to take small sections across, and I'm going to transition them to the back. So I would start here. I lift this up. I'm finding my guide, one on this end, one on that end, because this has been cut and that has been cut. So, I don't know if you can see it. Let me do it like this. You can probably see it this way. All right. So I'm going to lift this hair up. And as I'm lifting this hair, you see that hair falling? That is the guide on that side. Here it is right here. It's about to fall again. You see it? See it falling right there? Okay, so what I'm doing is, this area is pretty much the same. These are the guides. I'm just marrying these because we're going up. And remember, this is going down. And because this is going down, it's going to be longer in the front. You follow me? Okay. So I'll probably do, and what's my point of reference? The apex. I'm always going back to the apex. So I know that everything has been coming from the apex, so let me start a little bit past the apex. Let me lift this up. I'm looking for my guide. There it is right here on the side. I'm pulling the hair at a 90 degrees straight up. Cut that off. Lift this up. It's a little bit too much hair right there, but because I'm pulling it at a 90, what's going to happen? So now, I'll make sure he's facing the right way. Okay, now he's facing the right way. Because I could mess it up if he ain't facing the right way. This right here is blend in to the back, except for right here. This needs trimmed. Now I'm going around the head from the apex, going to the side, just marrying my edges. See how rough that looks right there? All I'm doing is cleaning that up. Work my way down, clean that a little bit up. Work my way down. This should be cut. That's cut. Same thing. This side. Make sure I'm not in the front of the head. Yeah, I'm in the front of the head. Hold on. Section this off. Right from the apex, coming down. There it is. Trim that. As I go a little bit further down, I'm marrying these two together. This guide and that guide. They're done, and once I go here, this should be already done. It's already cut. A little bit cleaned up. That's that. Now this half of the head is pretty much done. Y'all follow me? Brock, so what I would do in the front is I would create from one point of recession to the other point of recession, and then I would blend it in. So I would over direct his hair back here. Now that I know that this is where the cut is going to be, guess what I can do? I can grab this hair and see where it's going to fall. You see that? If it's too short, I don't want to cut that. If it's long enough, then I can cut it. So I'm going to go here. I'm not quite in the front. I'm a little bit past the apex, but not quite at the front. I'm going to over direct this hair back to this guide. And look what quadrant I'm bringing it to. So if this is the front of the head, look what quadrant I'm bringing it to. What part of the quadrant is this back here? Nope. This is the front of the face. Occipital is straight back. I'm right side of it. It's where the head is beginning to round off. It's that other quadrant. So we have the middle quadrant straight back, and you have these two on the outside. There's our umbrella. I'm going back to the umbrella. So I'm going to bring this one to this area. I'm going to bring this one to this area because the middle's done. Go back here. I'll bring it back to that quadrant. There it is. I'll clean that up. Go a little bit higher. Clean that up. Look what I'm doing. Cleaning that up. Going just a little bit higher. But what I want you to see now is look at the angle. Do you see that shape that I was looking for earlier? This one coming up. Now this one's going forward. So as I keep going up, Brock, you watching? Fingers are going down towards that area. I can cut this off. I can get that very, very front of the section of the hair. I'm only doing it like in a mohawk. It's a very thin section that I'm going down right now. And this again, this is rough. I'm like painting the room. So when I grab this, it's still a little bit too long, which is okay. It's okay. As long as I have this shape and this shape. So now I'm going to go back to right past the apex. Right, not quite to the front. See that little bit I'm leaving off? I'm going to over direct this to the back. There's my section. Clean it up. Once I bring it to my guide and I'm trying to get back to this quadrant. If I can't get back to the quadrant, what does that mean I did with the hair? It's too short. So I'm gonna go to the opposite side. I'm bring this back to this quadrant. Fingers are going down. Clean that up. Fingers are going down. Clean that up. Now I can focus on the front. So when I'm looking at the front, this guide, tighten this up. See it falling off on the ends right there? But do I want to cut that off? I'm not quite sure. And when I say I'm not quite sure, I have to look at the rest of the frame. I'm used to the person just sitting one way and then me working around it. But I've been spinning this thing around, so I got to check. Let me wet it a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Comb it this way. Now I don't want to blast the TV, right? So. All right. See that long hair? That doesn't belong. But he look a little bit normal now. So I'm going to go ahead now that you guys can all see from the apex to the point of recession. I'm going to section that off, bring this forward, apex to the point of recession. I'm going to section that off, and now I have my V in the front. This V should be getting short to long. So I can sculpt this if I want. And when I say sculpting, I can go ahead and carve this. If this is where I want to go, I can go ahead and begin to carve that. The sharper your shears are, the wetter the hair is, the easier it becomes. See the shape? Okay? Let me do it this way for you. This is one way. There's my section right there where it starts to break off. So now that I know where that's at, I can go ahead and start to carve that off as well. Work my way down. Now I got my rough shape. It ain't perfect, but is it going down into a V in the front? Yeah? I didn't look at it yet, so it's a little longer on this side. I can over direct this. There's the bottom. I'm just looking at it. There's my top. So I can go ahead and section this. I'm pulling it down at a 0, but with an angle on it. And notice how I'm tying my guide to my guide. Do you see that? So as I'm doing this, and I'm over directing it slightly, my guide to my guide. Okay? Comb this down. Still a little bit too long. Right? No problem. Take this whole section. I'm going to bring this all the way up. See that little length? See my guide here? I'm just going to cut that little peak off. A little bit higher. Cut that peak off. A little bit more elevated. Cut that peak off. Do the same thing on the opposite side. Let me first over direct it because that's what I did on the other side. Y'all can see me? Guide to guide. Guide to guide. Next thing I'm going to do is this area right here. Lift this up. There's my guide at the bottom. Cut this little peak off. Come up a little bit more elevated. Guide, guide. The highest peak, go straight across the middle. Guide, guide. Cut the peak off. Now this would probably fall around where I want it. Now, was there anything about this and creating the framework that was confusing, or did I make it pretty simple? Okay. So now that we have that, this is the framework of the cut. Now I can go back and kind of finish this haircut up and make it look really, really good so that way you guys can pass your evaluation. This is the hardest part for you guys, this part, because it generally gets cut a little too short. They either go way too deep, it's a little bit too short, you don't have the actual shape of the cut. It's still heavy right here. I know it is. I'm looking at it, I can tell it's heavy. It's actually more heavier on that side than it is on this side. And I got 28 years of experience. But again, what did I do on both sides? I did what? What's the key word?
Yes.
I guessed, right? So I can clean this up and follow up with the rest of this work. So let's do that now. Not worried about the front. We got the shape that we want. Here's where all the hard work pays off. So now that I got this out the way, I can start right here underneath the, right at the temporal, and I can start right at the bottom and bring it up to my guide and blend that right on out. There's that cut. I can go right in here and then scoop it out to my shape of my cut. Okay? The other thing is I can just take this and go around the ear. Just come around the ear. The secret would be to just kind of sit it on the ear, not behind the ear, because there's no hair behind there. So for the mannequin purpose, you just want to keep it there so that way you can comb that hair back and it can feather on back. All right? Now I got that out the way. I'm going to go down here in the nape. Let me pump this guy up a little bit. Oh, I could just lift him up like this. What I want to do now is get from the nape into this area. I'm not cutting up into, I don't need to cut anything up here. All I'm doing is blending the bottom into the haircut. So I'm going to take this right at the nape, bring this up to my guide, trim that. Bring this up to my guide, trim that. Bring this up to my guide, trim that, trim that. We got a taper happening. It doesn't have to be to the skin. It just needs to be tapered. So here, right to the nape, pull this out. There's my guide up top, trim that. Same thing here, trim that. Get that little bit, there's a little weight line right there. So all I'm doing is get that little bit of weight line out. Little weight line out. Little weight line right there. That's done. Now I can fix this side that was a little bit longer. Get this out the way. Right at the temporal. Bring this out to my guide up top. Cut that right off. Take this and scoop from the bottom. Work my way right out to my guide, and the shape of the cut continues. Clean around the ear. Clean around the ear. You can do that with your shears, you can do it with your clippers. Doesn't matter. The reason why it's not cutting as well, this blade is not designed to cut wet and dry. That's one of the reasons. See that little spot right there? Clean that little piece off. That looks a whole lot better now. I can also lift this up and trim some of that too, as long as I'm maintaining my shape. Well, you guys aren't timed on the 450, but we want you to get through the haircut. You're generally timed more on the 1200 because you should be proficient enough to get through the haircut pretty quickly. Okay, but as far as the 450, we're not beating you up. We just want to know that you can. Look at this. See how short this is? And see my guide up here? That's too much weight. Look better? Okay. I can open this up, and right at the bottom, get some of them hairs, or I can go right at the bottom and take this right into where the hairline is. How's he look? Not bad. I can go right back in, bring this out, and clean anything that's sticking out. Now you see the shape of the hair, right? And I can begin to put them in position. So there's still a tiny bit of weight. Now that I combed this all back, there's just a tiny bit of weight in here. Lift this up, pull that weight out, comb that out the way, lift this up, trim some of that weight, trim some of that weight, trim some of that weight, as long as it looks good. You just don't want it real short. This little hangover right here, there's that. Opposite side, comb is back. Hey, this side looks like pretty good. There's a little bit of hangover right here. Trim that right off. A little bit of weight right in here. Remember, we painted the room first, and now I'm just fine tuning it. Clean that. There's a little bit of hangover right here. And our haircut's pretty much done. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're looking for the actual shape. So now, when I go to check my shape, there's the moment of truth. You can see it already. Do you see the shape of the cut? You see it? I can bring this hair, it's going right to the comb. That's the shape of the cut. The front, we know we got the length that we want. If I take this length and I take this length back here, I can tie these two together, and then this hair should come up to the comb, up to the comb. Remember, this is a little bit longer, so it's going to get a little bit longer past the comb. See that? That's the shape of the cut. Is it perfect? No. Is it passable? Absolutely. Okay? And there's no such thing as a perfect haircut. The idea is to create the objective that you need in order to execute a good haircut. One of the things that I would like to see more from the students when you're done executing your haircut is to somewhat style the mannequin and don't just say, oh, I'm done with my 450. No, I mean, whether you're going to use some pomade or not. So what I do when I'm using product, and I got it on my hand. This is more like a matte or more like a cream, so I can blow dry style it. Notice how I'm just kind of shoe shining it and just kind of getting it on the edges, right? The other thing I'm not doing is going against what I'm trying to do. I'm coming back with it, and I didn't plop it on it and create all these streaks and heaviness. I'm just slowly getting on it. Now that I got in there, I can get my fingers, and I can add my fingers to it. Now I can start adding my palms and repositioning this hair, going in the direction that I want this hairstyle to go. Go back in, get it in palms, get a little bit more. Now that I got that out the way, I can begin to, where we at? I got you, hold on. Oh, you was taking my juice. I know what happened. Ain't that something? So when you're blow drying your mannequin or your client, you want to blow the hair in the direction you want it to lay. You don't want to be pulling the hair this way and blowing that way. Everything should be blow dried in the direction that you want it to go. I'm blow drying in the direction that I want it to go. Same thing on this side. I'm switching hands on purpose. I'm starting from the nape, working my way back to the occipital. Get that out the way, I'm not worried about that. Blowing from the sides and working my way back. I'm creating the foundation here at the bottom and working my way back for this style. The key word is for this style. The foundation is at the bottom, just like a house when you're building a house. And this is for the bottom, working my way up. You don't paint the house first. You build the house, and then you paint it. Going back to our house analogy. Coming down with this. If I want the hair to stick up in the front, what I want to do is, yeah, I need that lifted up. All right, cool. If I want this hair to lift up in the front, I want to blow this down first. I don't want this to stick up. I can have this going flat. I can lay this down. But if I wanted this to stick up, I want this to go down forward so I can confuse the hair shaft. I want to confuse the hair shaft to do what I wanted to do. Meaning, the hair wants to fall forward, but I want it to lift up. So I want to dry it so it's almost dry going forward, and then when I go to lift it back, I'm going to have a much lift. That's without doing any interior cutting. We're just focused on exterior cutting right now. If I want to roll this, grab a pinch and roll this back. Add a little bit more heat. Right? You can see there's a lift there. See that bump? This is going down. And then I can wiggle, grab, wiggle, grab, but look at the direction I'm pulling the hair. Pulling it forward. Now, I can blow that back. Look at all that lift. Move it out the way. I don't want to mess with it. Get my fingers, kind of push it back, leave that alone. Next section. Wiggle. Look at the direction I'm pulling it. Then I can take it back. It wants to fall forward. Why does it want to fall forward? What's that? Because no, I dried it forward. Not completely, but mostly. But what happens is when I go to lift that back, now I have maximum lift. I'll show you in a second. Now that's maximum lift right there. Go back. All right. Now that I got maximum lift, let's sit them upright. Next thing I can do, I can begin to comb this back, get this hair to lift up. Now I got maximum lift, but it ain't gonna hold in place unless, so what I would do here is I already positioned the hair the way I want it. I'm gonna spray from back here and let the blow dry do the trick. Then I can use my fingers, reposition this hair the way I want it, put it where I want it. I'm just showing you a quick little style, nothing crazy. But I just want to show you how to manipulate the hair to get it to look the way you want. Right? We got maximum lift. We got maximum lift. This wants to fall. How am I going to get this to stand up? I had a molding cream at first. The other thing is it's still a little bit wet right there. That's part of the major problem. Okay? But the idea is, guys, for you to be able to see how to execute your 450 haircut, you need to keep a little bit of weight. You need to maintain length. Here's what we're looking at. Length here and maintain in this shape. If you can do that, the rest falls into place. Is there any questions about anything I did or anything I can talk a little bit more about? So, I mean, different names are different things in different countries and different states and different counties. Like a temple fade in New York is a tape up. Yeah, right? It's the same thing, but it depends on. So what I do when someone is asking me, hey, can you give me this certain particular look? Even if I think I know what they mean, I need a visual. In today's world, most people have Facebook, social media, right? So you can ask them, do you have a photograph? Nah, I ain't got no photograph. You got Facebook? Oh yeah, I got Facebook. Was there a wedding that you went to? Yeah. Oh yeah, you know my brother's wedding, my birthday. Because they probably got a haircut for the event. So those are things that I would ask for. Back in the day, before social media, I would ask people, you got a driver's license? Because most people will get their haircut done for the driver's license picture. Now, if they're creating a new look, well, the cut I had this when I had my driver's license, but now I'm trying to get this. We got to figure this out. We got smartphones. You can come up with a look. They can say, I want my hair like this on the top, but I want it like this on the side. You know how to marry them based on the shape of the cut. Did I do anything here that you thought was just extraordinary? It's very simple. I created the framework first, so let's recap. I created my guide above the parietal ridge to create my framework from the top so we can blend it to the bottom. That was one cut the whole ways around. So you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts on the top. Then I did 3 going down, and in the back 4 going down because it's a little bit longer to go with. Then what I did is I took my horseshoe off, and I began to marry them using my what? No, but before I used my shears, what was the framework I was using? The umbrella. This quadrant is the back. These quadrants are where everything starts to over direct to. And then everything past that in the umbrella is coming to the end of this quadrant because it's all going to transition back. That's why I don't have no weight lines. Everything blends into the back. I have no weight lines. Everything blends into the back. This guy looks like some guy that he's part of the country club. I don't know.
So in this quadrant where the head starts to round, that's when you angle the comb going towards the
Correct. Correct. Yeah, so the flattest part is the parietal ridge, left and right parietal. That's the sides. Once I got past the ear, everything begins to round off towards the occipital bone. That's why I created the drop for this particular haircut. And if you feel your own head, it's flat, and then right by your ears, it starts to round off towards the back. So if that's what the head is telling you to do, then follow what the head is telling you to do. Each look is going to be slightly different. If it was shorter, I probably wouldn't have over-directed it as much. But because this is longer and I need to maintain weight, all of this has to match. This has to blend. So now, when I look at this has to have a weight and this has to drop to the front. Has to have weight and it has to drop to the front. Why did the hair bounce back in place? Say that? Not because of the hairspray. The reason that the hair bounced back into place is the science of hair. The foundation of a great hairstyle is a what? Foundation of a great style is a great haircut. That's number one. Number two, the reason why the hair, no matter what I did to it, messed it up, it bounced back into its shape is because the H bonds were affected and I manipulated the hair to do what I wanted it to do. That's what happened. Because I manipulated this hair to dry and come back, guess what happens to the hair? It's going to do what I asked it to do. I messed it up, but the moment I put it back into place, the hair's going to fall back in the direction it was because I confused the hair to lay the way I wanted it to. Instead of falling down natural, it's laid down the way I want. Pretty cool trick, right? Mess it up. It looks crazy. Boom. Put it right back into place. Because I confused the hair shaft to do what it was.